Hello everybody, welcome to a new video and happy President's Day. Today we are going to be discussing Jimmy Carter, 39th U.S. President, has entered hospice care at his home. He was admitted to the hospital several times in the past few months, and now he wants to receive care at his home, live his last days in the comfort of his own home and with his loved ones. And what a run for Jimmy Carter. It might be a course of a few days or a few weeks. We don't know exactly. I'm sure we're all hoping for the latter, but we understand that this is going to be his last moments with us, and I thought that it'd be cool for us to kind of recap this before he passes through, and just kind of talk about his legacy right now while he's still here with us. And the legacy is a complex one. I know that many of you are saying, well, he wasn't the greatest president, but what he stood for as a person and what he strived to do even after his presidency is very important. This article from the Associated Press does a great job explaining just the impact he had on everybody he interacted with and the American people as a whole. He came into politics. He was the governor of Georgia, born and raised in Georgia, still lives there, which is I think amazing. Him and his wife, I forget her name. Let's scroll down here. Rosalind. How could I forget Rosalind? They're actually the oldest surviving couple. People don't realize that. Jimmy Carter right now is 98. His wife Rosalind, 95. And both still living strong. I just think it's amazing. He was elected president in the 1976 election. Still going strong and still active into his 90s. We'll get into that later. First, just want to talk about him as a politician, as president, and we'll get into his post-presidency. But he came onto the political scene as the governor of Georgia, not super well known, but decided to take a swing at the presidency after Watergate, after Nixon resigns. Of course, Gerald Ford takes office, pardons Nixon, and even though Ford did not do a bad job, but there seemed to be some of Nixon's misconduct kind of rubbed off on Ford, and of course, pardoning him, even though Ford would argue that was the right decision, it didn't look good in the public. And there had been a long time since the last scandal of that magnitude. I mean, you probably have to go back to Warren G. Harding with Teapot Dome, and also with his extramarital affair. I don't know if I should say that, but that wasn't even discovered until after he had passed. So really, the Watergate scandal and the cover-up, really, the cover-up from Nixon trying to fire the investigator, Archibald Cox, it really sent the American people into a spiral, and they really, at that point in time, lost trust in the presidency. And Carter kind of took advantage of this, saying that he would keep the trust of the American people. And he was an outsider, never been to Washington, served in government as the governor of Georgia, but ran as an outsider candidate. He was going to reform the office, reform Washington. And he was successful. He defeated Gerald Ford in the election in 1976. I believe he got, 297 electoral votes. Unfortunately, his presidency is not looked at from many historical experts as one of the better ones. The country faced a lot of the same problems as now, kind of, as the last year or two. High inflation, high gas prices, and also the Iran hostage crisis, which lasted over a year, definitely tainted his perception by the American people. People don't often give him the credit, though, for that. The important thing to understand is that the captors of the American hostages over in Iran kind of wanted to stick it to Jimmy Carter. They released the hostages hours after Reagan takes his office, but just so that they can kind of stick it to Jimmy Carter one more time, and so that Reagan will kind of take credit for it. And that's kind of what happens. But Jimmy Carter really did most of the work in his administration, putting diplomatic pressure on the Iranians. And I don't know too much about hostage situations, but I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say that that's not probably a simple thing to get accomplished. I know probably people at the time were kind of hoping for a more rapid response, but those kind of things take time, I would assume. And people don't often give him the credit, and probably in the election of 1980, it was looked at as, obviously they hadn't even been home yet, obviously a blemish on Jimmy Carter, but once it was all said and done, they were back home. I think he actually deserves some credit for, even though it took a while, and it's going to take a while, those things aren't simple. That's not a simple situation to sort out. That he deserves credit for that, as it was all said and done. But he was not done after that. You look at this, is a really good article, details a lot. Post-presidency, he actually won a Nobel Prize in 2002 with work with the Carter Center. He's done a lot. The video detailed some of the things he did, like taking trips abroad to Africa and elsewhere, trying to secure clean water. He said that he wanted to outlive the last guinea worm, a disease that you get from unclean water, and it says in the article that through his work and working with others in the area, that they decreased the amount of guinea worm infections from several million to just a few dozen as of 2021. So he certainly got very close. Let's see what else we have here. Yeah, I love how it said that he obviously did the work for the Habitat for Humanity. I remember actually in news a couple years ago, he was hospitalized at a working site. I think hit his head, but just the fact that he was out there working into his 90s, maybe at that point in life, most of us would say, oh, we'll just pass it on to the next person. We've done our fair share, but he really, and not just then, but throughout his life, kind of looked into the man in the mirror himself and said, I have to do this. You know, it's kind of going back to the work with water sanity over in Africa. A lot of people acknowledge that as a problem. We all know it's a problem, but how many of us are actually going over there and helping firsthand? But he taught. It says that he taught Sunday school, which I think is just great. I think working with youth, inspiring the future generation. This is a guy who cared. Jimmy Carter really cared deeply about helping others and how he would be viewed. I don't think he did it for publicity necessarily, but he definitely is. Just from a person to person standpoint, he's in my opinion, he should be viewed as one of our very just best people to ever take the office. I'm just, wishing him the best wishes. I believe it was last year or 2 years ago, him and Rosalind celebrated their 75th wedding anniversary, which is unbelievable that he got to share this long journey with his wife and his family. He has grandchildren that are now grown. I believe it says his grandson is now on the board of directors or they're in charge of the Carter Center now. So his work is certainly not stopping. Certainly the things he worked for would definitely be continued by his admirers, his family, and others. And I definitely think he was a real person, a real human being. We don't. That's kind of undervalued in today's society, but I think that's one of the best compliments you can give somebody. And him and his vice president Walter Mondale, who also lived into his 90s, out of the great state of Minnesota, actually died a few years ago, I believe in 2020. But they were the longest living president vice president duo. Both of them lived longer than any other president and vice president that served alongside each other. So certainly he's lived a full life. He's done many things, accomplished many things, and certainly one thing they won't say is that he lived too short of a life. He's done a lot of great things, and the decision he made is he's content with where he stands. We know that he's a man of faith, and he is just made the decision to live out the last few days, few weeks, whatever it may be, with his family. We know that he is at a good place, and we wish him the best. We wish him the time that he has left. He will enjoy it. I'm just guessing here, but I don't believe that he's worried or scared at all. I feel that he understands the choice he has made, and for us, I think we have to respect that decision that he made. It's hard to put yourself in his shoes, in somebody's shoes that makes that decision, and say what we would do. It's hard to say, but his health has been declining over the last couple years. He has had frequent hospital stays, and he wants to receive care at his home with his family, living out the last time that he has left. I wish him well. We as Americans wish him well. I think he is going to be remembered well, for sure. And I think that's about all we have today. I think I'll link this article in the description. It probably goes more in depth. I just touched on a couple of things, but that's pretty much it. Jimmy Carter, 39th U.S. president, ensures hospice care at his home, seemingly living out his last couple moments. We hope it will be as long as possible, and we wish him that he will be happy, as I know he is. I know he's content with what he's done, content with the choices he made, and he really should be. He really is. Jimmy Carter is, like I said earlier, a real person. And that's going to be all today. Thank you guys for watching. Again, if you want to read the article, down below. And thank you. See you later.